Welcome to day 5 of buying my reseller warehouse. I think I've titled this now Hustle to HQ, trying to come up with something kind of a tagline. So today I am actually filming from inside the new building. Yes, it's a little echoey in here because there's nothing in here. But what I've been doing today, which is on Sunday, is coming in and prepping for the electricians. In this video, you might be able to see a little bit later, there is old fluorescent lighting in this giant room, in fact, throughout the whole building. And that was the number one thing that I wanted to attack before I moved anything in, is I wanted to get this old fluorescent lighting replaced. And of course, we're gonna put in efficient LED light panels. So the electricians are gonna be here for pretty much the whole week, starting tomorrow, day 6. And so what I had to do was come in and essentially measure everything out and lay out where our shelves are going to go for inventory, because in this large room, this will not only be where the inventory is, it's also where we'll have our workstations and all of the business is going to happen. And so it's very important that when the electricians put in the new lighting, that they know exactly where to place it. So what I've done is, on the floor here, you can maybe see in the little video if I can add it in, I have taken measurements and put down blue painter's tape in order to mark off where the shelving is going to go. And that way when they hang the lights, they can try to hang the lights right down the middle of the line for the aisles, so that there won't be as many shadows and such, and so it should line up pretty well. So the nice thing is, the way that I have laid out this building, originally I was sort of doing this on Microsoft Excel. I don't have any kind of a CAD program or something, but I laid it all out and I had my kind of draft plan of what it was all going to look at. And that's what I was doing when I was laying out the blue painter's tape today. But it turns out I made a mistake, and on my Excel sheet I had sort of I assumed that the shelves were about 4 feet longer than they really are, and so I ended up with having an extra 4 feet here at the end. So now what I'll do is go back and look at that again and see if perhaps I could add another 4-foot section to make the shelves go a little longer. But the nice thing is that because this space is so much larger than the space that we're moving from, that literally I don't have to build all the shelves in my plan in order for us to get all of our live listed inventory in here, and then also have plenty of room for all of my death piles, money mountains, whatever term you like to call those things. And so probably to begin with, I have 5 racks of shelving that I've laid out on the floor, but likely I will only build 4 of those and give us a little extra wide aisle, so that from the front of the building to the back of the building, we will have a nice pathway there and a line of sight that'll make it look a little bit bigger. Another good thing was, in my original plan, right here, this little room is going to be where we'll store a product that I sell called Best Hobby Pages. This is a product that I bought, gosh, how long was it? It was more than 5 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And it's an album page system for people who have patch collections and other types of collections. I won't get into the whole deal, but it's a product that I have to order from the manufacturer, and I get it, like it arrives on a pallet, and I have to order 25,000 units when I do that. And so this is kind of my replenishable line of items that I sell in my business. And so I need to have a room that's just for that inventory. And that's what this room is going to be. It's going to be full of shelves. And originally in my plan, I thought that I would have a table set up out here, kind of a workstation on this side. And that's where we would do all of the shipping of the Best Hobby Pages. But looking at it and measuring this room and thinking about what the storage space that it's currently in, I'm pretty convinced that I can just put everything inside here and have that workstation right on this side, so the employee that's shipping everything out can kind of just look out into the warehouse. Not that they would need to, but I think it would be kind of nice to do that. So this whole room will be devoted to that product, which we ship. We sell a lot of it every month, so that's a great little thing for us to add on. So I'm gonna have fun actually tonight, going back into my Microsoft Excel file and kind of tweaking the layout now that I've actually measured things. The realtors were pretty straight on when they had measured this space originally. It was me who sort of goofed up in my Microsoft Excel file and shorted myself 4 feet. I don't know how I did that, but I've gone and laid everything out. So I think it's really gonna be ready for the painters to come tomorrow. Day 6, I also have another guy coming to take a look at some other projects. He might help fix some of the molding, the shoe molding, some of that's missing in the building. And then we have some ideas for some plumbing projects. So we're gonna take a look at that as well. So I'm looking forward to really, like, this will be the beginning, right? I mean, you know, I've already given those guys some money to for them to go and order the lights. And so they're first gonna start off by demoing all of this fluorescent lighting. I'm not sure if that'll take them a day or two, and then start installing all the LED panels. But you know, you will get to see that in this series of videos. A couple other things I wanted to mention, because I had a conversation with my friend Libby of Consignment Chats, and I was saying, you know, what are some things I could sort of talk about? And one of her things that she sort of saw from my day 1 video that I shared with her, she said, you know, this riches and niches thing, and I do agree, and I kind of led with that, is that you hear this all the time, you know, in reseller talk, is that, you know, you can niche down, but it's really hard for people to do that. And I really don't see that many people, at least doing, you know, reselling content and such, that really have niched down to something really specific. So let me kind of talk just for a second about what I have found personally the benefits of kind of niching down is. Number one, we always talk about sourcing, right? People are, you know, having to go to, I guess, Goodwill, the bins, whatever thrift stores you have in your local community in order to scrounge items to sell, whether they be, you know, houseware items, hard goods, or often clothing. And so when you're in a niche, that is a problem, because if you say you're only going to sell one specific thing, how are you going to source that? So you really have to master that before you get into it. Now, again, I don't have a prescription for anyone. I will just tell you that for me, because I'm so plugged into my community of hobbyists, that I frequently go probably 4, 5, 6 times during the year. I will go to our weekend, we call them traderies. They're scouting memorabilia events. They're held all across the country. I know, right? You wouldn't think this is such a big hobby, but almost every weekend of the year, somewhere in the country, there are these shows going on. In fact, some weekends, there's like 3 or 4 or 5 of them happening on the same weekend, but obviously scattered throughout the country. So that's an opportunity for me to go there and get items. And then also, I have had a lot of good luck just with Google, just putting out lots of content on YouTube and on my website, and people sort of finding me. Also, I've been super consistent for 15 years, actually a little more than 15 years, in sending out an email newsletter, which I don't know that I've heard many people, if any, talk about that in reselling, the idea of having a newsletter, an email newsletter that you would send out. Now, if you listen to other types of content, not specific reseller YouTuber type stuff, but other people who do online stuff, you will hear them talk a lot about building an email list, because that is the one thing that you own and control in your business. So, you know, if you have Instagram, you get kicked off Instagram, you're screwed. If you have, you know, some social media thing and that platform fizzles out or whatever, again, the thing that you own, though, is your email list. And so, you know, for someone like me who has a lot of repeat buyers and have been doing this again a long, long time, that really is kind of the thing that has benefited me. Now, it has been a hell of a lot of work, so I'm not trying to kid anybody there. I publish to my Scouting Hot Finds newsletter 3 times a week to all the collectors that are on that list, and I have thousands of them on the list. People add on and drop off all the time. That's the nature of the beast. But literally, I've been doing that since 2010. And I'm recording this in 2026. So I can't tell you, you know, that it would be easy to build that. I'm not here to tell you how to, you know, start growing your list or what platform to use, that sort of thing. But if you're talking about how would you make it work in a niche, is I think you have to become someone who's kind of known in that niche, where you sort of have a little bit of a draw where people will contact you, whether it's asking you questions, but also potentially when they're ready to sell their collection, then they would reach out to you. And so that's kind of what's worked for me, and it's worked out really well. So again, you know, going back to day 1, I don't, you know, film this to say that, you know, this is what everyone should do. I'm just sharing my example of what's worked for me. And because I've been doing this for so long and really using Profit First, I got to plug Mike Michalowicz's book. Since about 2022, I have religiously been putting aside every month a good chunk of money every month consistently to save up for the down payment to buy this building. And so, you know, almost 4 years later, I was able to pull that trigger, had all the money saved up, got it done. The other thing I want to talk about for those of you who have taken that step to lease space, which is what I've been doing for over 7 years, is, you know, as you know, everything has gone up, right? So just here's my lived experience having moved to Charlotte. My first warehouse space that I had was a little over 1,000 feet, and I think I was paying around $1,000, you know, about what is that, $100 for what, you know, you can do the math. Anyways, about $1,000 for that space, and I was there for 2 years. But one thing about the contract with this group is a big, you know, landlord company that owns lots of property. They sort of had a built-in increase for every time you renewed. So I was sort of looking at that time and thinking, well, I think I want to move into a bigger space anyways, and so I started looking around, and I found this warehouse space on Craigslist. I know, Craigslist, right? And so I found this one on Craigslist. The pictures were shitty. I mean, it was like a fuzzy picture from the parking lot of this unit, but the price was right. And so this was the building I'm currently in. So it was $1,200, I think is right, for 2,000 square feet. And so I bid on that real hard. And so went over there, met the guy. I met the person who actually had built the building. He was still the owner, and his name's Phil. We had a good relationship. He was happy with me, not as happy with some of the other tenants in the building. There was about 6 different units in that building, as a lot of times warehouse spaces have that split up. So I was there. I think my first lease was for 2 years. And it was time to kind of renew. And I knew things were getting a little fishy because Phil started showing up with random people to kind of walk around the building. And he wouldn't tell me what's going on. Of course, probably wasn't my right to know, but I wasn't stupid. So I kind of thought, okay, well, he's showing this building as if, you know, you were someone who was trying to sell it. And sure enough, that's what happened. So along during that time, when it was time to renew, Phil actually, for some reason, he was a little slow on the trick. He didn't actually talk to me until my lease had expired, and I was sort of doing the month-to-month thing. And then when he came back to me and said, all right, we want to renew your lease, he raised the rent 65% in one jump. If you sign on to stay here, it's going to be 65% increase. Like I was about to, shit bricks. Well, this is why, because he was going to sell the building. Of course, this wasn't the conversation he and I had, but he was going to sell the building. And in order to, the whole thing with commercial real estate would be, if you're going to sell the building, you need to show that you have this number for what you're leasing it for. And so he told me when I first moved in that he always kind of like had a lower the market value price. He wanted to have people that would stay longer. And so that was kind of what, got me in the door. So when I signed the lease, I went ahead and signed for 3 years. Originally he said, maybe it was a 1 or 2 year lease, but I got it for 3 years. Because I was sort of like, well, hell, if you're going to raise the rent all the time, I just want to, put me in for 3 years. And then maybe in my mind, I thought, well, at the end of 3 years, I'll do something different. So it turns out, sure enough, he sold the building. And the people who bought it, out of town, based in New York. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. They do have an office in Winston-Salem, but, Scout's honor, I have never, in over 3 years, met my landlords in person. I think they have come by the building, maybe, but I have never met them, which means they haven't come around very often. And so they were raising the rent again, even higher. So my lease with the first guy, Phil, that I had gotten was a 3-year lease. None of the other tenants had done that. They all had gotten a 2-year lease. So they all got hit with negotiating with the new landlords, and the landlords raised everyone's rent to $2,500. Now I had this little grace period because I had an extra year built in, but then when it was time for my lease to renew, I had not gotten out of the building yet. I was, been doing this whole thing in 2025 of trying to get a new space and buy something. But I knew that this was hanging over my head, that I was going to have a $2,500 per month lease payment in order to stay in the place that I was in. Now, mind you, these guys would not fix anything, right? In their mind, the way the lease was read, they had no responsibility to fix anything, which, can I just say, is a really shitty, dumb idea, because I can tell you that in my building, okay, I have talked to some of the other people, and like one guy, for example, the hot water heater wasn't working, so, and the landlords weren't going to fix it, so he just turned it off. In my situation, I had a toilet running, and it was running and running, but the landlords weren't going to fix it, and I wasn't paying the water bill, so I went a long time without fixing that toilet. There's some lights that aren't working, there's some other things that aren't working, but without that kind of relationship and understanding, why would the tenant want to spend any of their money to fix up somebody else's property? And the property is just kind of like, it's not falling in, it's not dilapidated, but it's suffering, right? It's not being fixed. And so I just had the writing on the wall, and really for me, it's a math equation. In my mind, I said to myself, this is why I came to the idea that I was going to buy a building, was if I stay in that same space that I've been in for the last 5 years, I am going to give these guys $30,000 a year to stay there. $30,000 a year to stay there, and they're not going to fix anything. And oh, by the way, there's like 3 car repair shops around me, so there's cars everywhere, broken down cars, shit everywhere. It was just like the writing was on the wall. But really, the $30,000 number, that was why I wanted to leave. So that's where in my mind, I'm like, okay, if I go out and buy my own building, once again, I've been, Mike McAllowitz, thank you very much. I've been saving my profit up for that nest egg to pay the down payment. It was just a matter of finding the right place. And in other days, I won't keep going on today about it, but in other days, I'll tell you about some of the other properties I looked at. But in my mind, I started going in ChatGPT and running some numbers and asking some questions. And when you do that, it's like, if I had stayed in that place for another 5 years, do the math, it would just be hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would have paid these guys out. Versus if you're able to buy something, it's really 2 things. One is you become your own landlord. Thanks to how the tax code is written, you literally, you have a LLC that owns the property, and then that LLC rents to the other LLC, and somehow all that works with the IRS, and you get to deduct your rent, and everything works out. That's why I have a bookkeeper. I pay a bookkeeping service. I don't have any kind of, Reseller Genie or whatever the do-it-yourself things are. Mine's too complicated, and I can't slow down long enough to think about that. But essentially, that's the deal. It's just you're gonna invest in a piece of property that likely will increase in value, and then I'm the landlord. So I'm gonna fix all this stuff. I'm gonna replace the lights. I'm gonna make sure the toilets don't leak and all that. And so and I'm gonna be here for 15 or 20 years. Is kind of my plan. So. Yeah, I think that's kind of the story there. So again, long-winded story, but I'm sure that some of you might sort of scratch your head and sort of think like, why would you do that? But to me, it was just a really, it was what I wanted to do. And it's interesting because I was watching Nashville Flippers recently, and they had a young lady who does Whatnot. I think her name is Katie Coe. I'm so sorry. That's the name of her company. She's been very successful on Whatnot. And in the interview, she kind of said the same thing. She bought a piece of property and had a building built on her property. And she kind of said the same thing. I think in her case, it was going to cost her like $8,000 a month in rent to lease the size space that she needed. So it's just one of those things, if you can get the capital together, then, and if you look at buying the building as an investment in itself, if something happens to me or later on down the road, I don't want to do this anymore, then I could either sell the building or lease it out to another business owner. So, that's just how I look at it. So, all right, well, this has been a very productive day, although I've just done it all by myself and haven't had any help at all. Again, in the comments, much as Libby kind of gave me the idea for a little rabbit hole to go down in this day. If you have any questions or comments or things you'd like to see or just any other things, please leave them in the comments below. I would love to respond to those. I'm filming these a couple days ahead just so I can try to keep the pace up of one every day, which is kind of an aggressive thing, but I'm trying to do Pat Flynn's little challenge of a 30-day series. And since I got a lot going on, I thought this was what I would document. So, all right. Thanks very much. Appreciate you watching. Jason Spangler, again, SanteeSwapper on eBay.